Annabelle, the first violinist, plays amazing music. She edited a lot of the video that you saw, and she's running the tech for this now. And
And we are live, so let's get started.
Well, welcome everybody. St. John Flynn here with the three of the four members of the Apollo Chamber Players. We have Matt Dietrich, Annabelle Ramirez, and Matthew Dudzik. Let me point out that Whitney Bullock, the violist of the Apollo Chamber Players, is not here. You may have noticed in the program that we just watched, she was heavily pregnant. And she has now had her baby. She had the baby on Friday, so that's why she's not taking part today. And we offer her congratulations to her and her husband Adam, and to their first son Phoenix. And she now has a second son whose name is Axel. So Whitney, our best wishes go out to you, Adam, Phoenix, and Axel, and we look forward to seeing you back in the saddle again, so to speak, in as brief a time as possible. But welcome everybody else to this live Q&A session. Welcome to Tracy Silverman, electric violinist, and welcome to all of you who are joining and taking part. And Matt, would you like to get the questions rolling? Do you have something that you'd like to throw out there?
Sure. I thought we'd maybe start. We did a little bit of editing on the interviews that we did with both Tracy and Kimo, and they were very gracious with their time. But actually, I want to make sure that Kimo is on here. Does anyone see Kimo? Uh-oh. You know what? Let's start with Tracy.
He's here. He's joining right now.
Oh, awesome.
There he is.
Kimo.
He's connecting.
Late to his own party. It's okay. Hi, Kimo. Can you? I think he's muted. Hey, Kimo, can you hear us?
There he is. Yes.
Hi, Kimo. Can you unmute, please? Hey, let's see if he can unmute here.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we got you. Welcome, Kimo.
Oh, Tracy, Matt, and all you guys. Unbelievable. Beautiful, 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 unbelievable job.
thank you, man.
I think I might be an okay composer after all.
Understatement of the year.
Thanks to you guys, though. Only if you play it, I think. What a great job. What a great job. And the video, whoever did your video, he was awesome. Or she, or whomever it was. That was really great. And to watch the movement of the camera, it was so in sync with the music. I just thought that was really great, especially that depth of field thing in the back of Annabelle's hair.
That was thanks to James Templeton, who was our videographer for this. Sorry, this is Annabelle speaking. My camera is not working, but I am here as your ghost voice. So.
All right, Annabelle.
So I think, it's important that we acknowledge the wonderful work of James Templeton. And actually, just a really brief history. When we did our festival of our 20 commissions, September through October, August through October, we hired James to edit. Actually, that's not true. The principal dancer of the Houston Ballet, Connor Walsh, sought him out to record his portion of this really amazing dance choreography, new dance choreography to one of our commissions. And anyway, long story short, we were so moved by his artistry, videography artistry, that we reached out to him to do this particular piece. So James is amazing. And of course, Annabelle, my wife, did all the video editing. So
I am glad
a lot of the credit there. So
yeah.
There was something I was hoping that she would edit out during our conversation, and she did a great job.
We have an encore B slides that are going in the vault for release in about 2 decades. So
lock it up, yes.
the vault. So, but yeah, why don't we start? Actually, a few things that we did cut out, just because it got a little bit long in the conversation. But it was very interesting to us. Was Tracy asking you, is this the first time writing on the electric violin? Right. Tracy, Kimo.
Yes, this was the first time, and like I had indicated in our earlier conversation, I had a large ensemble of 30 musicians, and one of the musicians in the band was Zach Brock, who was a violinist. And
great one.
Right, he was very, very, very good, and his intonation was just like mind-blowing. And so there's a piece of music that I had written, and I made sure that I highlighted the electric violin. But understand that I knew it was electric violin. When I was at Berkeley, I also had a electric violin as part of the music that I was composing. So that wasn't so new, but what was really new about this and about Tracy was his sense of improvisation, not just the note of improvisation, but the use of the instrument as a whole as an improvisational expression. And I could see that when I saw some of his videos on YouTube, that when I wrote this piece, there's a lot of liberty that I'll have to be able to say something as opposed to only write something. So for instance, in that piece, I had indicated, used a wah-wah here, but I didn't put a plus and a negative to say wah up, wah down, wah up, or anything like that, because he understood the idiom that I was writing for. So this was, my first time writing for a violin as a solo instrument with a ensemble. And it was fun, really, really fun.
I wonder what the Italian is for use the wah-wah here.
I don't know, but I think Beethoven would have made something up.
Well, thank you, Kimo. And one other question that we had to cut out for timing issues. This is for Tracy. What was the interplay like between the electric violin and the acoustic instruments? And of course, people just heard the performance, so they can kind of get a sense of that. But maybe you could talk a little bit about the challenge of blending acoustic and electric.
Yeah, well, some of you viewers may have noticed that I had a microphone over, when I was recording. And you might be thinking, well, it's an electric instrument. Why do you have a microphone? Isn't it coming out of a pickup and a cord, directly out of a cord cable? And yes, it is doing that, but it's also, I use a microphone so that it picks up the sound of the bow, just the bow noise, and also, believe it or not, my breathing. Because when you listen to a string quartet, you're probably not aware of it, but you're hearing the room. You're hearing the sound of the space in between those players. And part of what you're hearing is them breathing. A lot of times, you'll hear like a big, like a, for a cue, and that's part of the way a string quartet sounds. And if you take an electric instrument and just take its direct signal, it sounds very fake next to these real instruments, because it doesn't have any of that bow noise, any of that humanity that we're used to listening to in a live acoustic setting. So I put that microphone to try to capture that so that we can live a little bit in the same acoustical world, and it really helps to blend the electric with the acoustic instrument.
That was cool.
Well, let's throw it open to the floor. Any burning questions from any of our guests? Who'd like to go first?
Well, I have an easy question, actually.
Hey Dave.
Tracy. By the way, I shared this with the Fiddle Hell Facebook group.
Thank you, brother.
Thank you.
So hopefully a lot of people say Fiddle Hell's a big festival. We had a couple weeks ago.
Wonderful.
A bunch of sessions, and one of our 120 instructors, but the coolest one on electric violin was, of course, Tracy Silverman. So I noticed that the quartet was playing pizzicato kind of the standard way with the first finger usually, and you have a thumb-based approach. Does that come from wanting to be a rock guitarist, or where does that come from?
A good question, Dave. What it comes from probably is the fact that I generally like to play pits down here, kind of like guitar style, and pluck it with my thumb, and it's just much more idiomatic for me to do that. So even if I'm holding it up here, I'm kind of doing the same thing, and it's definitely a different kind of a sound than you get when you pluck the string up. As any jazz bass player knows, that when you play in a more jazz kind of context, you're thumping the string kind of sideways, pulling sideways. In classical context, you're sort of plucking it up much more delicately. So it's a different kind of sound, and so I use my thumb. Good, very observant, good eye.
I have a question for Kimo, if I could.
Yeah, absolutely. Go ahead, Jack. Yeah.
My wife and I were both blown away by your music. It was beautiful. It was very, very emoting. Anyway, I wondered how you would relate your musical composing to your photography composing.
Oh,
if that makes sense.
I think the connection is more about art in general. I look for ways to express myself because I feel that I'm pretty bad with words. I used to tell people as a Vietnam veteran, when people would ask me, what did you do in Vietnam? No matter what I said, it never seemed to kind of give the full spectrum of what it was mentally, physically, what it was like on this day and what it was on that day. So I never could find the words. I always found myself trying to, well, how can I explain it? And then once you have that conversation, there's a void, there's something that's left, and you feel like you didn't say everything that you wanted to say. So through art, photography, and music, I feel like I'm able to say what I want to say about my external world. And so with photography, I take a picture of, for instance, in Washington, D.C. of the Lincoln Memorial. It was very moving for me at the time when I took the picture in 1980, I think it was. And I was there in Washington, D.C. and I took this picture, and I took pictures of lots of different monuments. I moved here to West Virginia from Chicago after spending 40 years in Chicago, in downtown Chicago, in a condominium. And now I'm living on the cliff of the Potomac River. I've taken more pictures of the Potomac River over the last 3 or 4 years than I've taken of anything, because it really, really settles me in. I feel connected. And then when someone looks at that image, they're able to understand who I am. And then I don't have to come up with words as who I am. And, like I'm a guy who likes water on the Potomac. Well, that's not enough. So my pictures will sort of tell a little bit more than the written word. So I think that is the connection. Thank you for asking.
I've got a question here from Jed Galen, and he asks, Jed Galen, yes, obviously you know him.
I love that guy.
Doing, Kimo, great to see you. Wonderful, fantastic piece. I mean, and played with such imagination and conviction by all. It was I was so glad to be here and experiencing it with everyone. Wow, fantastic.
Wow. I didn't even see you there, Jed.
I hide very easily.
Can we ask how you two know each other?
I've conducted 2 of Kimo's pieces and actually commissioned Kimo's Taking Into the Liquid from String Quartet, which I believe Apollo played, to make it for string orchestra. Yeah.
Wait, were you in Ethel?
No. This I met Kimo because I conduct Two Rivers Chamber Orchestra and a couple others in Shepherdstown. And so Kimo and I met, and I heard Into the Liquid, and I said, would you please orchestrate this for string orchestra? And Kimo was very kind and did so, and it's just as great for string orchestra as it is for string quartet. I like both versions, I have to say. And I heard your performance of it and was really struck by it. So yeah.
Thank you, Jed. I don't want to put him too much on the spot here, but we have another maestro in attendance, Chelsea Tipton.
Chelsea, how you doing, Chelsea?
Yeah, you guys know each other.
Hey, Chelsea.
Yeah. Chelsea's a music director of the Symphony of Southeast Texas, where I also play, and also Whitney. Welcome, Chelsea. Thanks we just actually had a concert last night.
Yes, we did. It's tough times we're living right now, and so this presentation tonight is really uplifting. So thank you so much, Apollo Chamber Players, for presenting this.
Wow, Texas is well represented.
Yeah,
there's lots of great stuff going on in Texas.
Yeah.
Jed, you had a question about how the piece, the recording, was put together.
Yeah, exactly. It's very simple. It seemed like maybe the quartet played first, and Tracy, you were playing to that. Is that what happened?
Exactly.
Yeah. Since we're all doing these kinds of things, unfortunately, that was like I was mostly just soaking the piece. And at a certain point, I had to say to myself, okay, how are these guys doing it? So,
Yep.
It was very creative the way you guys did that.
It was beautifully done. Felt very organic.
Very organic.
I think a lot of the credit for that goes to Annabelle for putting the video together in such a way that, was not at all static and didn't seem like they were in one place and I was in another place. By breaking it up the way she did and keeping it moving, it was very effective. She gets a lot of credit.
Thank you so much, Tracy.
Yeah. Beautifully done.
But we found that doing some of these projects, it's very possible to do remotely. And back in, I guess, February, when I contacted Tracy for the first time, we had no idea what, COVID was going to happen. And I was hoping that, by fall, this would be fine. He'd be able to come join us. But, it just didn't work out that way. But I'm just so happy to have this, out there in this form, because I think it will live on. And a little bit more of a technical detail for the musicians here. The fact that this piece is more or less in 4/4 time, or it's a time where we did use a click, so that did help things a lot. But I know even in the click, musicians, you tend to take a little time here or less time there, and I think Tracy did a great job of performing with us from afar.
Oh, thanks, man. It was a pleasure. You guys gave me this beautiful mix to work with, and it was easy to match your wonderful intonation and bowing and things like that, had a chance to kind of add my stuff to it. It had certain challenges in that there are little cadenza spots, for the violin, and spot where I'm playing over a loop. I'm creating a loop and playing on top of that. So we needed to, edit stuff, move stuff around, shift things a little bit, but
I think it's going to go over just fantastic if we ever have an opportunity to do it live. I just think it would be quite the interaction between you 5 people.
Yeah,
it'll happen.
It was really a shame to not be able to be in Houston tonight and do this live. I gotta say,
I love the purple haze. That was pretty cool.
Well, we're very lucky to have one of the underwriters for the commission with us this evening, Rhonda Sweeney. And Rhonda, thank you very much for making this possible.
I feel honored. Thank you.
Rhonda,
we're actually. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I love your sunset.
Well,
did you take that picture?
Yes, I did, and it's in Hawaii. So we go to Hawaii Well, that was my question for you. When you saw Hendrix in Waikiki, were you living there?
Yes, I was. I heard the tape, and I said I graduated from college. I would be one old guy, but it was actually high school. In 1969, I was at Leilua High School in Wahiawa, and my dad was in the Air Force. So we were stationed in Hawaii for quite a while, and the name Kimo, of course, means Jim. So that's where the name came from. When I left Hawaii, I wanted to keep Hawaii with me. So when I went to Berkeley, I told people, they said, "Hi, Jim." I said, "Call me Kimo."
Well, my father was at Hickam Air Force Base in 1962 to 1965. And so we lived in Aiea.
Yeah.
And which is, yes. And so I went to the Waikiki Bandshell several times for various concerts. And I did, that was an interesting connection. When we had lunch with Annabelle or maybe it was dinner early in the pandemic with Annabelle and Matt and Donald, well, of course, my father was in the Air Force and he was actually in World War II and had an Air Force career. But Donald has always been very interested in the military and especially with veterans. So when Matt and Annabelle approached us about this, Donald immediately leapt in and said, "Well, how much would that cost us to get involved to commission this. And we were all in from the get-go on this. So thank you very much. It was a great piece. And Donald says,
and thank you,
he can say hello to
oh, he's there. Thank you.
Yes,
Hi,
he's
Donald.
over here to the side. I don't know if you can. There he is. He's coming into the picture.
Hi, Donald. He's kind of there.
Well, I really appreciate it, and as a veteran, I have to applaud you once again for, and also to the Apollo chamber players and Matt. I mean, Tracy, that video that you put up some while ago, when we take the time to really reflect on those who have served, not who was right or who was wrong, but the fact that they served, and I think that in itself, to show that respect is amazing. And this is one way for you to show that kind of respect and for you to be a part of what I am doing and from the standpoint of me as a veteran. I really appreciate that. Thank you.
There's an organization that I'll mention called VetTix. We've been in partnership for the last few years. So most of our concerts before the pandemic had, maybe 2 or 3 dozen veterans in attendance. And so we donate the tickets for the concert. And they leave some of the most heartfelt, meaningful messages on the website. And I mean, it really touches your heart, and they bring their families. Yeah. And, I just feel like, music and art is just such an important way that we can connect with with that community and show our love to them.
Yeah.
So
it's great.
So, and thank you so much, Rhonda and Donald. I mean, you all are so generous, and the things that you are helping to create will again live on forever. And yeah. I think that's really wonderful.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Another great supporter of the Apollo Chamber Players, and in fact one of the Apollo board members, is Richard Gruen. Richard, yes. Welcome. How are you?
Hey, Richard.
Hi. I'm fine. Good to be with everyone. Rhonda, thank you and your husband for your generous support. And Kimo and Tracy, thank you so much for helping us launch our 2021 season. I can't think of 2 better people to help get us going for our new season.
Thank you. Thank you.
So the question that I put in,
yes,
the question that I put in the chat, I'm here in Houston and I love country music, and probably one of my favorite pieces is Fire on the Mountain, done by Charlie Daniels. May he rest in peace. And I wondered, Tracy, if you've ever played Fire on the Mountain. And Dave has been kind enough to give me some chat bowing technique to describe what's involved. And I'm the board member that just loves music, but I have no understanding of technical knowledge. I don't play an instrument. But Dave, I appreciate your comments very much to help me understand bowing technique. I've learned something. But Tracy, have you ever done Fire on the Mountain? I can see you just slamming it.
Thank you, sir. I don't think I know that tune. I have to say, there's Dave Reiner is here, who definitely knows that and 2,000 other wonderful tunes. Even though I live in Nashville, Tennessee, I'm not much of a fiddler, I have to say. I have a handful of tunes that I learned many years ago that I fall back on, but it's just kind of not my wheelhouse. But I would give it a shot for you, sir. I would.
Well, I can tell you that I have played Devil Went Down to Georgia.
All right. That I played.
Charlie Daniels, not on violin though. I was just playing guitar in a band, and I was playing for the troops in Afghanistan, and that was one song they wanted to hear all the time. So our fiddle player just went to town with it. And yes, but I enjoyed it. I enjoyed the tune, but I will only play it once.
That's a tune. That's one of those tunes you have to know if you're a fiddle player.
That's right.
And just to give a little credit where it's due, that tune Charlie Daniels took from Vassar Clemens, who first wrote it as Lonesome Fiddle Blues.
Which one is that?
D minor, Devil Went Down to Georgia.
Oh.
Came from Vassar's playing of Lonesome Fiddle Blues. Which
that right?
I didn't know that.
Listen to them together. You'll hear it's the same stuff. I mean, so Charlie added the words and brought it to life in a different way. So great tune and all that. But we need to give a little credit to Vassar Clements.
So actually, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe the tune is actually entitled "The Devil Went Down to Georgia," and I called it "Fire on the Mountain" because that's part of the lyrics.
Yes,
which just would emphasize my
Oh,
lack of technical knowledge and my simple enjoyment of music.
What's going to happen here?
You might be
Thank
right.
you all.
All right.
Thank you all. Oh yes, there it is.
Oh yeah. Okay.
Yes.
Brings back
Y'all
memories.
have made my night. I can rest easy now. Thank you again.
I think that's a nice segue to my. I'll introduce my father is on here. I think both my parents. He's a minister, so I think that's a good segue from "Devil Went Down to Georgia."
That is. Let's all get right now. Hello there, Mr. Dietrich.
Oh, he's.
Can you unmute, Dad?
I think he's muted. Yeah.
Oh yes. Okay. Well, great concert last night, Chelsea. Really appreciate it. And whenever I preach, you know, the devil's going down to Georgia. You know, every Sunday. No, I eschew hellfire and brimstone sermons. I never gave one in my life and never will. But Tracy, I have a new appreciation. I'm a guitar player myself, folk music out of the 60s. I'm learning to appreciate the fuzz button. Much greater tonight than I ever have in the past. It's good to hear that.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Yeah.
Funny to be a guitar player to be reintroduced to fuzz through a violin player.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I have a question, Tracy. What is it that makes fiddling, and the way that the Apollo chamber players play, Matt and Annabelle, for example, the way that they play the violin? What are the differences?
Well, there are a lot of jokes that begin like that. I think Dave probably knows a lot more punchlines than I do, having to do with the cost of the instrument. But you know, it's essentially very different music, as I was kind of mentioning in the interview during the concert. You know, so much of what we think of as string music, string playing, has to do with sort of this orchestral model and the classical music model, which is really a fairly small but very important slice of musical history, you know, having to do with 17th, 18th, 19th century, for the most part, European art music. But the rest of musical history throughout the rest of the world has a whole lot of folk music and more sort of vernacular music that comes from folk traditions. And every continent, there was some stringed instruments, and the Celtic music and that came to the U.S. in the early parts of our country, early time of our country, mixing with the Appalachian music and all of that kind of stuff, really is much more folk-based music and has all the kind of rhythms and aesthetic of folk music. So the playing style is quite different to match that, and you know, just sort of like you use a different accent to play different roles. An actor would have an accent for that he would use to play a British role, different from a Brooklyn character. If you're a string player, you sort of need to have a different accent. If you're playing classical, if you're playing Mozart, you even need a different accent between Mozart and Brahms or Bartok within classical music, but you certainly need to have a different accent, meaning technique, for bluegrass and folk music. So, without getting into the weeds of what those details are, They're basically because of the different origins of the music.
If somebody was interested in branching out into the electric violin, how would they do that?
Well, good question. Well, first you need to find an instrument. It's a whole. There's a bit of a learning curve involved. You have to figure out what kind of music you want to play. What kind of instrument do you need to play that music? Are you more into a distorted, loud rock and roll? Or do you want to do more fiddling with a more acoustic sound? Really, which would change what kind of gear you're going to use, from the instrument itself to the type of amp you're going to play it through or not play it through an amp. Things of that nature. There's a wonderful place, a shop in North Carolina called the Electric Violin Shop, and the electricviolinshop.com, that has every conceivable model from all around the world at every price point. And that's a great place for anybody who's interested in electric violins to have a look. My buddy Matt Bell over there is the guy to talk to. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
I mean, we have a question for Kimo here. Did you have any inclinations for music before you heard the Hendrix concert? I mean, I guess you were 15 or 16 years old, and that's really what sparked your love of music. And then you went to Vietnam and learned guitar, and then you went to Berkeley. But before that, did you sing or did you play piano or anything else?
I always had a guitar with. I mean, when I was in Hawaii, I was in high school, and if you could do something other than study, I was doing sports, but every time I picked up a guitar, it seemed like I got a crowd around me, and I was pretty bad, but I could play all the Monkees tunes, so I guess I got pretty well known for picking at that kind of stuff. But I wasn't serious about it. It was just, I played football, I played basketball, I played guitar, I played track. I just sort of, went through life looking for a good time. But I didn't get serious with the guitar until it was basically after that concert. It was, the whole plane ride to Vietnam was just thinking about what I had heard. And as soon as I got to Vietnam, I tried to put what I had heard to the guitar, and it was a disaster, but the troops loved it. So
do you think you would be a composer had you not served in Vietnam?
No, composition started at Berkeley because I was exposed to Oliver Messiaen. And if I was to talk about someone who's playing the kind of music that is heavy metal, his quartet for the End of Time just changed my life.
Yeah, that's great.
I mean, that piece of music is just a time signature. I was just like, oh my, I tried to do it on guitar. I was going to do an arrangement of it. Then I heard Mussorgsky's Night on Bald Mountain, and I wanted to incorporate that. Then I heard Weather Report, and I want to put that in there.
Weather Report, wow.
Put that in there, and then I heard Miles Davis, and I was trying to put them all together. So, and Berkeley at the time was just one thing. That is, if you do Dizzy Gillespie and don't do anything else. I mean, you do Dizzy and Duke Ellington, and other than that, and I came in there with an arrangement of in memory of Elizabeth Reed. Now, you guys probably don't know, maybe a couple of you.
Allman Brothers.
Allman Brothers, right.
Yeah, so, I love that song.
Yeah, I did an arrangement for big band, and this guy named Hal Crook, who was a famous trombone player, said, "What the hell is that?" They were so used to you doing, you do all the things you are and things like that. But I was really trying to find my voice by listening to as much music as I could. I mean, to this day, I still really love good country music as well as classical music, rock music. Yeah. So after Berkeley is, I think, when I realized that composition is the way to go. And I think it was because of my first guitar lesson at Berkeley. I thought when I left Hawaii, I was going to go to Berkeley, and Berkeley would make me George Benson. I didn't have to do anything but show up. And so I went to the first lesson and I realized I had to work at it. And then I said, okay, I'm not passionate about the technique of guitar playing, but I am passionate about how 20 instruments can sound so beautiful when they play together. So I got into the composition and learned that technique. And then everything they said to do in counterpoint, I did the opposite.
Good.
Yeah, I have a comment, Kimo, about your music, and it's always risky to say this to a composer, and even more so when there are a bunch of people listening. But so feel free to just say, no, Jed, really, you've got this completely wrong.
Okay.
but for me personally, when I study your scores and when I hear them, I hear how you write programmatic music, and there's an impetus behind it, of thought and philosophy, and then I get to know the music, and I feel, as is often the case with not all but some programmatic music, that that was helpful for me to get in the door. But once I'm in that room, I'm just in there with those moods that grab one onto the other, and I forget the program. I feel your music stands. I think the program is a great entree to it, but it stands without the program too, and I think that's a good thing. I think it's really it's an observation, really.
Yeah, I appreciate that. I actually will say to you that I try hard not to do the programmatic music where where there's a flute and then there's a bird in the tree, and then so you do the piccolo.
Right.
The elephants are coming in, and so then you do the tom. I try not to do that. What I try to do is to set a scene. And that's mainly what I do. If you remember, you may not, but if you look at my score for Quartet for the Sons of Nam, it was Quartet. When you guys saw this, the score, it had event 1, event 2, event 3, as opposed to movement 1, movement 1. And that is because I'm thinking of my compositions when I write them, like you're looking at a photo album. Yes. And when you look at a photo album, sometimes you don't have that elongated line, like a Beethoven kind of thing where things are connected. I'll look at a photo album from Vietnam and I'll remember, I remember that day. And then you turn the page and it's an entirely different scene, and entirely different. So that's how I look at a lot of my writing is experiences that I've had. And if I was going to take a photograph of it, that music represents me and that photograph, expressing it to the people who are viewing and or listening. So programmatic in a way, but more setting the scene.
Almost like Bach in that way, like a Bach oratorio. You have a movement and it does its thing, and then another. It's yeah.
Thanks, Jed.
It's really it's great to immerse oneself into one of your scores. It really is. Yeah.
And you're going to make me have to stop writing.
No, don't do that.
It's like the mic drop. Okay, I'm out of here. All right.
I think Chelsea needs to leave. I wanted to say thanks for being with us, Chelsea. Do you have any quick questions for Kimo or Tracy?
Well, thank you for this presentation. I would be curious, do you all teach or teach at a college or do you, one of the important things for my early development was when I went to the young people's concerts when I was in Greensboro, North Carolina in 4th grade. That had just a tremendous impact to hear music and to see a live orchestra. The North Carolina Symphony would come to Greensboro, North Carolina and perform. And so education has been a real important platform in my life. Do you all also teach or work with other young people coming up in the business?
Oh, I personally, yes. But first I want to connect back to your Greensboro day. My aunt and uncle lived in Greensboro and we're working on a concert presentation down there. It's amazing that you said that. And you might even, the name. He was the first Black Supreme Court Justice in Greensboro, Henry Fry, Judge Henry Fry. You may not know him, but
yes.
Yeah, well, that's my uncle. And
my parents, I go down there 2 or 3 times a year, even now.
Yeah.
My mother still lives down there, up there. Yeah.
My family from Fremont, North Carolina. My grandfather, that's where we're from. But I was teaching in Chicago until I retired here in West Virginia. And I was teaching music and music industry mainly was my main courses that I was teaching, and it was at a school called Columbia College in Chicago. Then I taught a little bit at Berkeley, then I taught in Chicago, and then I got tired of teaching millennials because they care less anymore. So I figured I'd retire. I shouldn't say that, I'm generalizing, but anyway. But that's why I retired, and so I'm not teaching now at all, but thanks for asking. Tracy?
Yeah, I actually teach quite a bit. I teach a little bit at Belmont University here in Nashville, which is a really interesting place because they have a commercial string department, which I participate in. And we really believe in this idea of a holistic string player who studies with me to learn sort of rock and electric stuff, with Billy Contreras, who's this amazing jazz violinist for jazz, and we have Ryan, who teaches Celtic and Appalachian and fiddling and bluegrass, and Elizabeth Small is doing classical, who's a Juilliard grad. So we have this nice, because it's just, we all kind of, it's an unusual thing in the string world, which is why I pointed out. But I've been teaching for many years, and I'm increasingly focused on it these days. I've been developing a program. I've been teaching this thing I call strumbowing for a number of years. I've written a book about it and a couple books of etudes, and there's another book coming out, and I've got an online course and stuff like that. And it's really, the older I get, the more I realize how important it is to take some time away from what I want to do with my career and to really focus on what young people can do with string playing in their careers, which is going to be a lot more years than what I have left in my career. And I've been trying to sort of change the way strings are played to some degree, and try to push that to take the ball down the field a little bit. And maybe I advanced it 5 yards or something. And it's time, for the next generation to take those ideas and take it a little bit further. So that's what I'm really focused on, because my goal is to get that ball down the field and get string players, adopting a new approach to the instrument. Not everybody has to do that, but to have that happening as part of string education. And it's going to take more than me doing it. So that's what I'm focused on, is trying to build a nation of strumbowers.
I think we're all trying to teach versatility too.
Yeah.
I think being versatile is what it takes to be successful in the 21st century, in my view, and I think in everyone's.
For sure.
I met a very proud father about a year ago. His son was a trumpet player at Juilliard. He was so proud. And I asked him, I said, what type of music is he involved in? He was so proud. He said, my son's studying to be a Baroque trumpet player. And I'm going to be very positive and everything, but I was thinking that, you've got to be able to do a little bit more than just Baroque music. And
right.
Young people, whether it's in composition, whether it's in conducting, or you have to be versatile. And I think that's what was so great. That's what's been so great about this evening's performance, is we're trying to look outside the box of just what we do with Dvorak or Beethoven or Mozart, and seeing where we can take things. And so this evening's presentation has really stretched my mind as well. So thank you so much. And thank you, Apollo Chamber players, for putting this on.
Yeah, I want to amplify that and say the Apollos have been just incredible with this whole 2020 commissioning program that they've been doing for the last year. Incredibly ambitious program, bringing all this new music, new ideas into the world, and pushing the envelope there in Houston with all of that really good work. And that deserves a whole lot.
Thanks so much, Tracy.
Bravo.
And we also could have done it with, thanks a lot, Chelsea.
Thank you,
I
Chelsea.
want to make sure that we acknowledge.
Paul Freeman?
Oh yeah.
Remember Paul?
Big mentor of mine.
Mine too. He premiered my first symphony.
Wow.
Yeah. He's. I figured you would. You know, he's.
Yeah. And my father, he and my father knew. My father's also a music educator. They were very close friends, and Dr. Freeman was a very big mentor of mine back in the '90s, especially.
Yeah, I just.
Are you sure you guys don't want to go to a breakout room, Chelsea and Kimo?
we could probably
have a lot of people in common.
Yeah, I think we would, especially now we got Greensboro, got Paul Freeman. We could probably talk about the Detroit Symphony's African American. I have to say this story: African American reading session, and you know.
Chelsea went to Eastman. I'm sorry to interrupt. Right? You went to Eastman, didn't you?
I did.
Yeah.
Oh, you know,
Paul Freeman was got all three of his degrees there at Eastman as well.
You know, W.C. Handy's daughter, I forgot her last name, but she was at the reading session, and everyone was talking about we have to have more African American music played by the major orchestras. And they went around the table to talk about, well, why is it that African Americans are not coming to the symphony orchestra? So one of these, this guy from Russia or somewhere raised his hand, and he said, well, it's just too expensive. And she said, and, you know, she was very boisterous, you know, she was older, she was like the wise woman. She said, bullshit. She said, you bring Michael Jackson to that symphony hall and they're going to have more money than you've ever seen in your life. So don't be talking about money. And I think everybody learned from that point not to immediately stereotype the reason that people may come to a concert may not have to do with finances. But anyway, I want to leave you with that, Chelsea. So nice to meet you.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, sir.
Hey, thank you, Chelsea. I'd like to ask Matthew a question. We've talked about fiddling and sort of classical violin playing, and we've talked about the differences between how a jazz bassist plays and how a classical bassist plays. What about the cello, and how did you find playing this piece? Because the cello is pretty firmly rooted in that classical tradition. There's not a great deal of cello playing in the jazz world or the bluegrass world, for example. So did you have to shift, or I figure when you were at the Shepherd School at Rice, they didn't teach you to play bluegrass cello?
Yeah, well, I'd say for sure there's a shortage of those sort of stylistic influences maybe over at the Shepherd School. There's a good deal of, maybe a small enclave of new music people over there who get into some sort of far out stuff. But, our initial contact with Tracy was over at the Youth Orchestra of San Antonio a couple of summers back. And we got to collaborate with him there, and we got to see a little bit of his strum bowing up close and personal, and get to sort of just hang out with him and play some of his original tunes with him. And that was a good sort of primer for what it would be like to work on a piece like this. Of course, we missed out on that collaborative aspect during the pandemic here. But, like everybody's been saying, this sort of 20th, 21st century need to be versatile. I've had to be versatile in my cello playing just to find things to do, and I think Apollo's repertoire, the stuff that we've gotten into, has led us down a bunch of different paths and pushed our palettes of technique. So I think there's a lot of that sort of trickled in, and yeah. I think that maybe answers your question.
Do you feel now, after the playing Kimo's piece and the 20 by 2020 commissions, that you're a different sort of player now? Do you play differently?
Well, I think for sure, like the whole thing has just put us through so much together, I think, as an ensemble. And then, personally pushed my playing for sure. So I think, yeah, I mean, we've all grown through the whole experience. Absolutely.
really quickly, I think we may have one of our 20 by 20 composers with us. Arthur Hernandez, are you there? I'm sorry, I didn't notice you, but
yes, yes, I am right here.
Hey, Arthur.
Well, thanks for joining, Arthur. He wrote us a commission inspired by Texas history and culture and folk music. It was the 5th commission of the project.
Hey, Arthur.
Hey, man. How's it going, St. John?
Good, thank you.
Good.
I do want to mention or recognize one of the other Apollo board members who is with us on this Zoom call, Candice Moore. Hey, Candice, thank you for being here. What was your reaction to hearing With Malice Toward None?
Well, of course, I really enjoyed it, but I thought what was interesting was I heard it played just by the quartet a couple of weeks ago. And so I'm sort of interested in, when you compose for both a quartet and a quintet, is it almost like rewriting it from scratch?
Great question. It was a challenge. Oh, you are muted. I'm muted for some reason.
You're fine.
No, you're not.
No, you're not.
Oh, a sign came up and said you were muted. So I guess I shouldn't pay attention to fake news. When Matt and I first discussed this, he said that he may want to do portions of it in schools or outreach kinds of things. And he was asking if I could put something together for maybe a portion. And I decided that what I would do is just look at the piece and look at the possibility of doing it. Look at the possibility of doing it as a string quartet. And I love orchestration. I love the challenge of trying to really create the essence of the piece that may be written for one combination of instruments, and then seeing if you can incorporate it into a small one. I've actually written, I have a whole full symphony that I orchestrated for piano, only because it was a challenge. So with this, it was a challenge, and there were some challenging things because some of the harmonies that you may want and that you were able to achieve with the Tracy playing one part and then the other instruments holding the other part. Who's going to play the solo in a quartet and when you have the quintet? So it was a challenge, but after what Tracy did, I don't think I'll want to hear any other version. I guess it's going to be up to someone to do some of those improvs.
We'll have to write them out now.
Yeah, right. Gonna have to write those out, and I did.
I think we are almost out of time. Maybe if anybody wants to ask a quick, short question before we go, I don't want to close it down without everybody.
While you're thinking of it, I just wanted to mention really quickly that we have Beethoven with us behind me right here, and I'll give a quick. I'll honor my former teacher, my teacher Ken Goldsmith, who passed away this past summer at Rice University. This was something that he gifted Annabelle and I, and anyway, we have a number of his paintings and music scores here in our studio now. And he commissioned a lot of music through his trio in the 70s and 80s, and we're trying to do the same thing as well. So I don't know, just wanted to honor Beethoven and my teacher Ken Goldsmith.
And I just have one quick question, if I may, to Kimo, and that is, when are you writing that electric violin concerto, man?
Oh, I don't know, Tracy, but now after this experience, it might be happening pretty soon. And soon is relative, right? Hey, Tracy, if you'll play it, I'll write it.
Deal, brother.
All right.
Look, everybody, thank you very much for joining us for this Q&A session.
Thank you,
very big
thank you. You were awesome. You were a great moderator, man.
Thank you. Thank you.
I like
you made it easy.
Sell yourself out.
Yes, I should do, shouldn't I? Pardon? If you need a voice like mine, then yes, you can. Absolutely. I've done a lot of voice work over the years. But I want to say thank you to Kimo and to Tracy for being such stellar guests and for creating a fantastic performance along with the members of the Apollo Chamber Players. And thank you all very much for joining us.
Thanks, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you. Thanks, St. John.
Thank you. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.